Hello there, welcome to the Rolling Stories podcast. I'm your host, Adrian Tan, and we've got a really fascinating guest joining us today. We're diving deep into the world of sustainability, a topic that's become increasingly crucial for businesses and organizations around the globe. And our guest is someone who's been at the forefront of driving sustainability initiative, Mr. Fong Tuan, or FT for short. FT is a seasoned HR leader with a passion for sustainability that goes far beyond just ticking boxes. He's been leveraging his role to embed sustainability practices, mindset throughout his organization that he's worked with. And today he's here to share with us his insights, challenges, best practices for putting sustainability into action. FD, welcome to the show. Great to have you here. Let's start by talking about what sparked your deep interest in sustainability. Was there a trigger moment or turning point that you realized this is an important topic?
Well, I think everything in life is evolution. If you really have to push, is there a trigger point? I think it's not a matter of suddenly there is this burst of idea that sustainability. I probably won't use the word sustainability, although that is the key word now. I've been in HR for some time, but I did not start off in HR, right? But that's another topic for another day. I started off in engineering and then kind of pivoting slowly and eventually to where I am now. And the discussion around, is it human resource? Is it human capital? Is it what? I think we are moving towards human development as a function, human development as a concept, rather than HR. We can still continue talking about, what is HR practices, blah, 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 and so on and so forth. But what particularly I'm passionate about is access to education, access to employment, access to equal opportunities. So that's my passion. And I've been working with the refugees for the past, 5-6 years now, particularly refugees that are not even recognized by UNHCR, like the Rohingyas, for example, where we do have quite a bit in Malaysia in my pro bono time, right? Not in my professional capacity. My question is this: why shouldn't this be in a professional capacity? Why a lot of this more sensitive stuff that is, more from a development of the human condition kind of a situation, why shouldn't it be in the agenda? So that's one of my passion. In my capacity as the Vice President of ASEAN Human Development Organization, I champion this particular pillar, which is access to education for all, particularly those who does not have access to this easily. For example, these Rohingyas, they don't even kids, adult kids, at whatever age, they do not have opportunity to go to school. They do not have opportunity to take any public examinations. And they are stuck wherever they are. If they are in Malaysia, Indonesia, or Bangladesh, or whatever, that's it. And they have to wait for asylum to a country that may want to take them. But prior to that, they are totally lost in terms of minimum education. So that is a sad situation. I know comparing to what's happening in Gaza and everything else, this seems pale by comparison, but we do what we can, right? So if you ask me, perhaps this is the trigger because I came from a family of educators. Both my mom and dad were teachers, and I felt that it's something that is entrenched and embedded within who I am.
This is definitely an unexpected answer because when you talk about sustainability, in most instances, you'll be hearing about, we make sure the quota of male, female employees are balanced. We give equal opportunity to everyone, those kind of stuff. You mentioned also earlier on, why are companies or individuals not really looking into the space that you're looking in right now? Do you have a personal hypothesis why?
Yes, it's not even a hypothesis, it's a fact, I think. Firstly is, very unfortunately, there is always a limited development dollar, right, to what we can do. Secondly, although more and more organizations, companies, corporates are diving into this sustainability space, I wonder very often, do they do this because it's the right thing to do, or do they do this because it is what their shareholders or the stakeholders expect? Or worse, because it is the only way for them to get funding from banks because of sustainable financing and so on and so forth.
There's a term for it, right? Called greenwashing.
Yes. I didn't want to specifically mention that, but yes. And you mentioned it at the beginning during the preamble, that ticking boxes. greenwashing is part of ticking boxes. The fact of the matter is this. If we look at three alphabets, right? E, S, and G. You can also have another three alphabets called D, E, and I. And now there's one more called belonging. But if you just focus on ESG, E is something that is, quantifiable. It's easier to do. It is measurable. How much, carbon footprint, etc., etc. The G is something we have to do anyway. The difficulty is always S. There's no specific definition of what S is, although you have UNSDG and so on. But S is how much you want to put in, how much effort you want to put in, what kind of investment you want to put in. The greatest problem in capitalistic corporate right now is the question is always, is there an ROI? Is doing good a factor of doing well? Should we do good after we do well, or should we do good because we are doing well? So those are the conundrum that corporates are playing. The mindset need to change, and all of us have a part to play. This doesn't necessarily mean it's just from the CEOs and so on, but policies, government policies even. And if government policies does not even do that, why can't organizations have their own corporate policies? Or as you go down to the existential personal level, we can also make that call ourselves to do what is right and for the longer term.
I'll be really interested to dive a bit deeper into that, but I would like to firstly take a step back and to help our listeners and audience understand, how do they tell what exactly is a genuine sustainability efforts from an individual, from a company versus mere window dressing?
Okay. Let me probably use one, okay? Let's not talk about this. I think what you're saying is big agenda, big stuff that we're talking for the first 2 points, right? Let me probably, distill this a little bit. The best example is mental health. Yeah. Mental health probably just came to the forefront. It has been there forever. For as long as human beings in existence, it is a phenomenon. First, we don't acknowledge it. Prior to COVID-19, it's there. But interestingly, most of our policies, health policies, do not include mental health as a condition because it's difficult to underwrite. Can you imagine you going to a insurance company saying that I am depressed? So who did the diagnosis? Some psychiatrist did the diagnosis. Do you have a specific, discrete, number that can say that you are suffering from it? None. So it is just a diagnosis, right? Therefore, it's difficult to underwrite. For it to be genuine, for example, the organization that I'm with now, rather than saying that we are supporting mental health, we actually put it into action and said, okay, it will be part of the list within, it's the same as you are suffering from diabetic or you're suffering from cardiac issues or whatever it is. It's a condition. It's a medical condition that need to be taken into consideration. That's one. Secondly is rather than, hey, okay, we have a program to, address mental health or mental well-being. We put our money where we put our, whatever that our resources, where we really make it work for people is we have actually a program that says, if you suffer from XYZ condition, you can actually take a time off paid for whatever time, which is the same as if you're suffering from other conditions. Why I use this example? Because well-being is a sustainable element in any kind of infrastructure. It's not just a HR policy. Well-being is not a HR policy. It's not a HR program. Well-being is a existential program that cuts across to everyone. Ticking a box would be, okay, we have a mental counseling team that is a third party. So this is number that you can call. So I'm wondering, so I tick boxing, I have it. Second, okay, we have a first aider team, but the first aider team has 3 people, but we have a company of people, for example. So again, it's a tick box. So immediately you see, right, having something in place is very different from pragmatically having something in place to deliver the value or deliver the objective that's supposed to deliver. And we can check this very quickly. If it's just washing it with a color, or the color itself is real because it's not a dyed color, it is actually embedded. So, I thought an example like that would be easier to understand.
Yeah, that would definitely make a lot of sense for us to look at sustainability in a very different angle. I also want to understand next then, because we started talking about greenwashing and then, differentiation. And the other thing that I think would complete the entire loop would be what are actually key barriers or roadblocks, or maybe to the extent excuses that prevents organizations from walking the talk on sustainability.
A few, I think, a few. Firstly, it's also number one, awareness. Very unfortunately, despite extensive literature, extensive soundbites, extensive narrative over at all kinds of media, even personally, right? Right after COVID, I'm sure everybody start thinking about, jobs are never secure. Even job security is sustainability. That's one. Beyond job security is compensation security is another one. You can have a job, but your compensation is cut by half for whatever reason. So all these, despite all these are being real, unfortunately now it's 2024. That happened in 2020. It's 4 years. Things are going back to very normal. For example, banks and big organizations, even big tech organizations in the Silicon Valley saying, well, I want everybody back in the office because, well, there is no excuse not to be back in the office now. It's more effective to be back in the office. Whether if the effectiveness is, I'm not so sure it is true that everybody back in the office is more effective, but, we'll probably chat about it later. It's still not there. I'm not sure whether it is just, ignorance that is being masked or real indifference. But that's the first barrier. People are not aware that this is real and is impacting people. That's first. Second is obviously the willingness to invest. Now they understand it, they know it's important, but there's no immediate returns. If there's no immediate returns and I cannot quantify these returns, or the quantification of returns is a longer burn, it's not a quarter by quarter, then perhaps it's better for us to grow our business in other ways. Perhaps it's better to pay our people rather than ensuring that they are, well taken care of psychologically, mentally, or whatever. It's because it is, easier to quantify. So that's second. Third is, I think the impetus to do it is not there yet enough. And that this comes around to very specific negative incentivization, perhaps from the government, or positive incentivization from a policy infrastructure perspective, is not strong enough. So since I am not compelled to do it, since I don't see any return in doing it short term, and since, I'm not very aware of all this particular impact that can, negatively impact me, why do it? Let's wait and, wait and see. And when we need to do it, then we can discuss whether we want to do it.
But in that vein, then it would be really very challenging to convince any senior management to even take the first step, especially in current climate where we are still in this year of transformation, efficiency, whatever you want to call it. Everyone is counting beans right now. And like you said, sustainability practices, it will take a long time for some form of ROI, for some form of KPI to trigger. So how would you recommend someone who may be equally keen as you, but trying to put things in place? What are some baby steps you would recommend for this individual to share internally and get the buy-in from senior management to take the first baby step?
Yeah. So let's focus on S here, because I think some of the E stuff are being done anyway. Because a lot of the capital funding requirements by either the Securities Commission or by the stock exchange and so on, before you can raise fund through equity, you need to have E in place. Most of the stock exchanges in the world have put this as a criteria. So E is taken care of. Governance by definition, because if you're regulated, like banks or like any other regulated businesses, sustainability would be a regulation that you have to, adhere to. But very rarely, the social piece of E, S, and G is regulated or mandated. So what I would recommend is this. Instead of, aiming for the stars, let's do what we can. For example, Adrian, you were saying the position that I took earlier about access to education and so on and so forth, or even well-being, is rather different from gender, right? Which is the easiest, most common thread when it comes to sustainability. if we push that agenda a little, gender agenda, we just, I think, March, we were celebrating IWD, the International Women's Day, and so on. My question is always, I'm sure there's International Men's Day, but nobody cares because everybody knows the purple is the color for International Women's Day, but no one cares what color is International Men's Day, and so on and so forth, because of affirmative action, right? We believe that, women needs their voice, which I don't disagree. But if we push the agenda a little, for example, if we put a KPI, a performance indicator, objective, in a scorecard and we measure diversity groups, but it goes beyond women. An example can be person with disabilities. Yeah, that's one of it. Second, what about those indigenous? I know we are not in America, but I'm in Malaysia. So Malaysia have indigenous groups which are underrepresented in the workforce. These, for example, person with disability, of course, they are underrepresented as well. So last year, we put in a KPI for person with disability to go to 1.5% of our total population. That forces, 1.5%, we have about 40,000 people. So we could do better, but just know that we started with 0.7. So we moved 100% to 1.5. Baby steps, 1.5. But even moving from 0.7 to 1.5 of total requires us to change many things. We don't have to invest too much, but you have to change the way we think. We have to change some of the infrastructure that we have to ensure that, it is accessible to people on wheelchairs. We have to have programs that allow people with hard of hearing, programs that can help them to assimilate into our normal workforce. Blind, they are able to then do their jobs. Do we measure them differently? No. They are still measured in a way, in the same productivity metrics like everybody else, but there is assistance and there is facilitation for them to deliver to that. That is some steps that we can take, but that requires some appetite as well. Again, people will say, why do we need to hire PWDs when I can hire people without disabilities? And I always tell them, guys, PWDs, the W can be with, but all of us have disabilities. You and I, we have disabilities. It is maybe not gazetted as a disability. We are not perfect people, right? So, and one of my narrative that I say is this: do you think it is easier for us to learn how to sign, or is it easier for them to learn how to speak? They can't speak. If they could, they would. They couldn't, right? So it's up to us. It's incumbent upon us to learn how to sign. So that's one baby step. Measure, but we don't have to be too aggressive, too ambitious. But something that we are already done, expand it a little bit, have the courage to go beyond something like gender, go beyond that and start measuring. And when you start measuring it, we then know, okay, there's a gap that we are not able to cover this, and therefore we need to do something different. Does it involve a lot of investment? No. The greatest investment is changing your mindset, not the infrastructure.
Which honestly doesn't cost a lot, but is the most hardest part to change.
Correct. That's right.
I personally have actually trained people in hiring PWD as well as retaining PWD. So I'm quite familiar with the kind of changes, kind of facilitation that is required. For instance, if your office access is not conducive, then for them to access, let's say someone who is physically disabled, to access your office, that will be a key challenge. But I think going beyond all that, it is actually quite obvious what are some of the more tangible business returns if you are able to see beyond just the facade. Like for instance, when we were doing training, we also were giving out case studies, and one of the bank in Singapore, UOB, actually has a team of people in their document. I think they call it document management department. Basically, people who are just scanning all your docs lah. And the entire team of them, almost the entire team, are actually made up of people with autism.
That's right.
And I've also seen other cases where, for instance, Uniqlo, they have someone who working in the store, and again with autism. So there are really many different examples. And I think the other thing also for us to think about, I'm not exactly sure in the case of Malaysia, but at least in Singapore, our birth rate right now is 0.97. It is horrible. We are almost number one. Going to win Japan very soon. If the population continue to shrink, and everyone wants to hire the Ivy League lah, the valedictorian. Do you have enough money to fight with the Google, the Amazon of the world? If
right.
not, then you have to look at alternate pool of talent. And this is just one aspect of it. Of course, like you said, sustainability can come in many shape, form, and size.
Yeah.
And based on what you've shared with me, it also seemed like it does take quite a fair bit of bandwidth, because I would imagine your professional commitment and then plus your personal commitment, it must be quite a juggling act. How do you personally manage your time, energy, and resources to make it all work?
Good question. Sometimes I ask that myself. Before I answer that, quickly, I couldn't agree more. I think the birth rate is dwindling everywhere because of cost, inflation, and so on. So, parents and couples are making the decision not to have so many kids in the first place, right? Not even getting married, because getting married is a cost in itself. Therefore, it becomes a problem when the severely and rapidly dwindling talent pool. Therefore, we need to look at alternate talent pool, as you mentioned. And not only PWDs, it goes beyond PWDs. There are so many different alternate underrepresented talent in the workforce. That segue nicely into your question about how do I manage. We all have 24 hours in a day, and waking hours, I don't know, depends on your sleeping patterns, 18 hours or something, or whatever. I think firstly is you have to ask yourself, what would be something that really drives your passion? Does climbing the corporate ladder the only and the main thing that you are thinking of doing in your life, or there are something beyond? I know it's a cliche, but all of us have a purpose. We have to find what that purpose is. But for me personally, I think I've been given a lot of privileges in my life. I don't come from a background of, affluent. As I mentioned, both my parents are teachers, and they are not, university teachers, or they are just, primary school teachers. So I come from a probably lower middle income family, but I've been given quite a bit of privilege. I got a scholarship, I get a good job, I, grow my career. I felt compelled to give back because I'm still able. I fear that if I don't do this, I'll regret when I'll do this after I retire. I think everyone should think about doing something that drives and fuels their passion. And when that is something that you want to do, you don't feel that tired, to be honest. Yeah, physically you are tired, but mentally you are quite whole and fueled to do what you need to do. But again, work-life balance, life-work balance, whatever you call it, equilibrium, whatever you call it, it's all us. We decide. And I'm very honored as well, and I have the opportunity to be in HR. So HR is a vocation that somehow coincide with what I'm doing, with what I like to do, making a change, making a difference. So I'm glad that I have this opportunity. Just that I do complain that sometimes I don't have time for myself, but it is what it is, I guess.
I'm sure our listeners at this point are eager to dive deeper into this topic and learn from your wealth of experience. Are there any particular books, podcasts, website you recommend for someone looking to educate themselves further on sustainability and its business implication?
Okay, wow. I don't read sustainability books, by the way. What I'm saying is this, I don't think any of us should take sustainability as a word or just as a concept. Everything we do, the moment we think it beyond a certain short-term objective, is sustainable in by definition. Everything that we think about, say, or do, if it has lasting effect, it is sustainable. So what books? I can tell you what books I have recently read. Interestingly, it is called The World According to Bob. It's about a cat. It's about a cat. Okay, let me give you a quick summary and why I think it's so fascinating. I read books like that. I'm a cat lover, so obviously I read books about cat, but this is the latest one. I just read it. I just finished it a couple of days back. It is about a drug addict, a homeless drug addict who busts and plays guitar and he earns what he eats every day in Covent Garden in London. That's probably in 2006. And he had a companion that he found also homeless, a cat that was homeless. So they become companion, and this cat saved his life, he said, because suddenly he has a purpose. he has someone that he has something or someone, in this case, the cat called Bob, that he has to take care of. And it's not just him, right? So he decided to got cleaned up. He got cleaned up. He went for rehab. He broke his heroin addiction and turned things around. Then he became not homeless anymore because he wrote a book. The book was made into a movie. And unfortunately, the cat died in 2017 or 2018. So died. He was 14 years old. So the cat died. Then he has to find new purpose. I think the moral, and he did. So he's now, I think it's such a fascinating story, is that what kind of lessons do we learn from corporate? Is for a person without any purpose at all, who is down to the lowest level of existence, homeless, no income, addicted to drugs, and probably have to resort to crime to, finance the addiction. As simple as a cat, I wouldn't say simple, but something or someone who gives a purpose to that condition can still turn things around. What more us, right? If I explode this into an organization, I've been to many organizations and I've seen some organizations who is like James. The person, his name was James, just because this is what we've been doing for the past 25 years. So this is the thing that we're going to do for the next 25 years. So we don't have to change our purpose and so on. So they do not discover that perhaps there is a deeper one. And because of that, they could not improve and could not move out from whatever that they were before. It's a fascinating story. If the listener, any listeners wants to check it out, it's called The World According to Bob. It's a very easy read. I read it in an hour and a half. That's almost like a kid book, but it's the learnings were, at least, it's extremely fascinating.
That's really interesting. I'm going to check out and find out more about this book as well. And with that, we have come to almost the end of the show. Thank you so much for making time today. But before we let you go, we are also jumping into our rapid fire segment, which is something new that we have introduced in this season. Short and sweet question from me, short and sweet answers from you. Okay?
Go.
First one, work from home or work from office?
Both.
In one word, describe your leadership philosophy.
And I have 3 words: freedom through responsibility.
Definitely. What is the best HR advice you ever received or given?
Never underestimate yourself or others.
Name one HR trend or innovation that excites you the most.
Not HR, but human development.
And last question, what is the most common HR myth or misconception that you want to debunk?
Pay is the one that drives performance.
Thank you so much. This has been a truly enlightening conversation. I'm grateful you took the time to join us today on Rolling Stories podcast. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and expertise. And thank you everyone for tuning in today. Be sure to subscribe to Rolling Stories and check out our past episodes if you enjoyed this discussion. We will catch you next time.
Thank you.